All right. Well, good evening, and thank you for joining us again. And my name is Fatia. I'm with the World Agricultural Community Project, and this is the Africa is Dialogue series where we are talking about the impact of colorism on self-esteem. And this evening, we have more global friends with us. I'm very excited to see you all and welcome you. A couple of you have been here before, so thank you for coming again, and welcome to those who are with us for the first time. So we'll begin with just asking everyone to just let us know, who you are, where you tuning in from, what is your cultural background? So for instance, where were you born, or where did you grow up, and where are you living now? And once you, let's see, whoever starts first, well, I'll start first and then I'll call someone else and then we just pick someone else to go, okay? All right. So I'm Fatia. I am born and raised in the Brooklyn, New York area in the US. And my parents are from the Southern US. So I do not know of my African heritage necessarily. I'm aware of it a little bit from DNA searches we've done, but we don't have any direct connection to it right as of now. But Southern US, that's pretty much my heritage, and New York City. And I will pick, I'll pick Niti.
Thank you. So my name is Niti, and I'm living in Australia and have been living in Australia for many, many years. My family background and culture is Indian, North Indian. And yeah, that's essentially it. I mean, I was born in Scotland, so I wasn't born over here or in India, but I've got a bit of a variety of things going on. But yeah, Australia's home for me. And I will pass on to Julie.
Hi, I'm Julie, and as of now, I'm living in Brooklyn, New York, but I was actually born in Germany. My mother is Korean and my father is African American. And we came to the States when I was 4 years old. The intention was my father was in the military, and the intention was for all of us to move here permanently. My father went back to Germany. My mother and I stayed in the United States. I've been here ever since. I grew up in the Miami area, Miami, Fort Lauderdale area, and I've been in New York City for actually 20 years now. And I like it here. I prefer it in New York more than I did in South Florida. But that's pretty much my story and my background. And I will pick, let's see, I'm not wearing my glasses. Is it Vamala? I'm sorry if I pronounced it incorrectly. I should probably put my glasses on.
It's Vimala. It's Vimala, like in Pamela. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Vimala. I am actually in Malaysia. I was actually born in Malaysia, in Kuala Lumpur. And I'm South Indian, so I'm a Tamil. So, but my father came from South India to work in Malaysia in the Malayan Railways. But we were all, me and my siblings were born in Malaysia. So we call ourselves Malaysians. Only ethnically, we will define ourselves as Indian. And I'm a certified coach. I lived in UK for 30 years. 97, I came back to Malaysia, came back home, and that's about it. Thank you. I will call upon, forgive me if I pronounce your name wrongly, Ajiwali.
You tried, actually. You tried. It's Ajiwale. Good morning, everyone. I'm Ajiwale Folaromi Samson. I'm a contemporary visual artist from Nigeria. I was born and bred in Nigeria. Okay, I've literally not gotten chance to leave this country. So I've lived my whole life in this country. I'm a Yoruba guy. I'm a Yoruba guy. I don't know if you know, that's a tribe here in Nigeria, Yoruba. So, and my greatest fear is public speaking, but I'm glad I'm doing it tonight. Okay, Geraldine. Sorry if I pronounce it wrongly. Geraldine.
Hi, that's okay. It's Jerry Dane.
Oh, Geraldine. Okay.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, I'm Jerry Dane. I'm in England, UK, in West Sussex. I am African. I was born in England, grew up in West Africa, and then back to England, West Sussex. I do lots of different things, but my main work is as a community advocate. So here we've got lots of groups and we're called ethnic minority groups. So I sort of try and stand in the gap to let people understand how different cultures affect people in everyday life and also work for the disadvantaged. There'll be things like IT, health inequalities, etc. I was just interested in this to see the impact it has on other people, colorism. But then the work that we do here hasn't gone down that's specific to actually be, say based on color. So I just wanted to hear what people had to say. And I think I'll call on, is it Eddie? Ed? Ed?
It is Edie, but I've gotten Ed and Eddie before, so I normally
Okay,
respond to all
sorry.
of them. Hi, everyone. My name is Edie, and I was born and raised in Texas in the South United States. I am the first daughter to Nigerian parents who came to the US my dad came in the 80s, my mom came in the 90s, and I currently work for a healthcare technology company while just enjoying life with family and friends. And I'm excited to be here and just, I think, have deeper discussions with new people than I tend to have with some of my friends, where we're just talking about silly movies and other fun stuff.
Gotcha. Thank you so much, everyone. Geraldine, can I ask you, you said you are West African. Where in West Africa is your heritage?
Sierra Leone.
Awesome.
So my parents came over to England in the 50s or so and just stayed, but then went back. And then the African son will understand you don't have a choice.
Mm.
And then came back to England. I came back to England, my siblings, and I just grew up here.
Gotcha. Very nice. Okay, I've got Sierra Leonean friends here. So thank you. But again, welcome to you. Welcome to everyone.
Thank you.
Go ahead and get started with the conversation. So in the previous sessions that we've had, which have all been enlightening, I mean, the more we engage in this conversation, the more we engage with people from different parts of the world. And it becomes like greater awareness of the fact that this issue with skin color and colorism and the bias and all of that is so much more beyond our own environments, our own, communities and whatnot. So to be able to hear the different perspectives and hear the different experiences is very enlightening. And I hope that it helps us to start to come up with ways that we can kind of help to battle it, to reverse it. We got to reverse mindsets, first of all. So how do we do that? So the topic that, or the focus for this issue of colorism that we chose is with self-esteem. So, a lot of people can experience different forms of colorism and maybe it does not affect them very much. They're not bothered by it. They might be very confident people, but it's something that has happened to them. But then on the other side, you have a lot of individuals who have experienced colorism, and it becomes something very deep and very hurtful and very painful. And, sometimes it's never spoken about, but, it might manifest itself in different ways, through our personality. Maybe the person has become bashful, maybe the person is insecure, but different ways it'll manifest itself. So when we talk about self-esteem and how colorism affects self-esteem, one thing I want to touch upon and see how this group is as far as your experiences, when we think about where it comes from, where is this colorism coming from? Quite often, like for myself, it didn't occur within our household, thankfully. So it wasn't something that we really saw or that I experienced from, my close family members or anything like that. Others have. It was more of what happened outside the house, friends and community members and things like that. So for you, I like to ask, how has colorism, I guess, shown itself? Did it have a presence in your families, in your households, in your close-knit communities? Like, what was your experience or even your observation? Did you see it, existing in someone else's household that maybe you took part in or, visited or something like that? So what are your experiences?
Okay. I think to answer your question of where I saw it growing up, fortunately, I didn't see or hear it at my home, nor did I really see or hear it at the homes of friends or family. I do think when it comes to colorism, it manifests itself in different ways. So I never heard things like, oh, maybe get out of the sun, you're too dark, or oh, what happened to you? You used to be so much lighter, as if it was a bad thing. But there are just certain signs here and there. So like maybe visiting your aunt and uncle and you go to the restroom to use it and you see like a Fair and Lovely soap or a skin bleaching product, hidden in the back of someone's closet. I think those are some of the things I noticed as a kid, and I couldn't put two and two together to understand like the larger context of like colorism in the world. But young me was like, oh, I guess she wants lighter skin. That's weird, but whatever. I need to use a restroom anyways. But it wasn't until I was in high school and I think just started to become more aware of like other cultures and how the world is, and kind of got out of my insulated bubble, where I realized like colorism isn't just a one-off thing. It's actually a very serious societal problem we see in many cultures, especially I think many Black and Brown cultures as well. And it made me kind of think back to the earlier memories that I brushed aside, and it helped, I guess, place context to them that I never had. So I feel I'm lucky I grew up never hating that I had dark skin, but sometimes I also wonder, I wish, how would having that awareness of how other people thought maybe make me maneuver differently as I was growing up. So I think I learned about things a little late to the game. So I love learning, which is part of why I'm here.
You mentioned that Fair and Lovely. We talked about Fair and Lovely last time.
Really?
Not
Yep.
familiar with Fair and Lovely, but I keep hearing about it. So it's very interesting that it's in these different places.
Yeah. It's,
Nisi.
I think in many cultures in the world, it's huge in Nigeria. Skin bleaching is a huge industry in Africa in general, and Nigeria is not shy to it, sadly.
And I would love to talk about that a little bit more. We might get into that in this conversation. But Nisi, do you know about Fair and Lovely?
Oh yes, I've used Fair and Lovely as a kid. So for me, I guess it was there a little bit in my house. So I think particularly from my mum to some extent, and she's fairly dark as well. So I think I spoke about this in the first session that you ran, Fatia, but like I think sometimes with generations gone by, and even now to some extent, you don't understand necessarily the things that you've internalized, right? And so I suspect over the years, she probably had a lot of things said to her as well and internalized them. And so therefore, I think often when you do see this manifesting in households, like in your own family, your parents are trying to do what they think is best for you, like try to give you the best chance of succeeding in life, right? Or, particularly coming from an Indian background, you know, the desire of parents to see you married and all the rest of it is huge, right? So this kind of goes hand in hand with that. It's kind of like, we're giving you the best chance to get married and have a successful life in the future, right? And so those little things like stay out of the sun and, you know, use Fair and Lovely. And, you know, so I remember going to India to see relatives. And whilst we were there, we would pick up Fair and Lovely creams, right, to take home, and you'd put them on and you'd be like, put them on and be like, oh my God, I feel like I'm a ghost now, because they just made you look pale and deathly. Like they didn't actually do much more than make you just look unhealthy, right? But you use them because you're like, well, you know, I've been told this doesn't, like my skin color is not great. I need to do something to change it. Let me try to do whatever I can to change it. And it's not just within the family, right, either. Like it's, you know, there's a community element to it, which is enormous and which kind of goes hand in hand with the what will people say type mentality that I think often pervades communities that are quite tribal in nature or family oriented in nature, right? So there's this big thing of, you know, look what they're doing, you know, everyone's talking about everyone else. And so this idea of what is beauty and what the beauty ideal is, I think in those communities can be, it's just reinforced by that sort of tribal sort of community. What are they, you know, what's everyone doing? People are looking at me, etc. sort of mentality. And so, you know, you hear it with like, you know, when newborns, when someone has a baby to begin with, and like, you know, people are like, oh, you know, what color is, what, like how dark or how fair are they? And people will comment on the fairness or darkness of the child. And it's really, I guess it's something for me I've only become more aware of over the last probably couple of decades as I've sort of unpacked what went on when I was a kid and sort of the self-esteem issues that came from some of those discussions as well. But, you know, once you become more aware of it, you see just how much it's a part of the way that people talk, and they don't even think about the potential impact of their words because it's so deeply ingrained that they don't even realize it's having a negative impact on people around them.
Exactly. I always wonder, you know, especially when you're mentioning about your mother, I wonder what her experiences actually were. Have you ever spoken to your parents?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question, right? And I haven't, but of late, like she said something to me the other day, and I think it was about my daughter. And you know, I normally just ignore what she says if it's about fairness or something or other. And I don't think she never means anything bad by it, right? Like this is the other thing, like, and I spoke, I think early on about, you know, not wanting to shame, you know, people who have these views for having them because it's got such a long history and it's so deeply embedded through our own personal experiences over time, right? Generational experiences. But I did at that point go, right, enough's enough. Like, you know, I've had enough of this. So I actually did, you know, say something back. And she was like, oh, yeah, of course it doesn't matter. And, you know, like whatever else. So I think over time, I think that conversation will begin. But it's, you know, it's funny. Like sometimes I feel like I'm having indirect conversations with family and community through the fact that I write about colorism so often, because I know that family friends, for example, who are, you know, my parents' generation and their kids read a lot of what I write. And I do write about colorism a bit in my own personal experiences. So through that, I have no doubt that the message is going back to my family in some way, shape, or form, right? Around what my personal experiences have been, which I think, you know, is a good thing. Like, I think at the end of the day, however the conversation starts, because it can be a tricky conversation to have with your family, right? You know, I love my family. I know they love me, right? But this is hard and it's traumatic, you know? Even talking about it in this forum, like when it's being recorded and knowing that it could, you know, be seen by my mom is, you know, it's tricky and it's difficult. So having the conversation is difficult too.
I can understand that. I can understand it. It's a sensitive topic. then how triggering can it be for elders in particular? I mean, because we don't know what seed was planted in them to make them want to be so cautious and protective over how we may be treated because of our skin color. So what happened with them? You know what I mean? So how far back does it go? What were the experiences, generation before? That's something that I wonder about because it had to come from somewhere. Ajawoli, you're in Nigeria, and Edie mentioned about that Fair and Lovely, and you're there. So what happened? I mean, what do you see as far as the I guess the attitudes of people there, the females or the women running to get the Fair and Lovely? Are the men part of that reason that the women want to become more attractive, or do the men use it too, or what's going on over there?
Yeah, in Nigeria, colorism is not really that rampant here like that because because of our skin colors here, so it's not really that much. But we still have people trying to tone their skins based on what people say regarding their skins, which results to bleaching of skin colors in order to gain favorism. And we all have spec here in Nigeria. There are people there are guys that like light-skinned women, and there are women that like light-skinned men, vice versa. So someone the spec of A can't be the spec of B. We all have different specs. So but it's not really a problem. Yeah, it's not really a problem. Yeah. And regarding my house, my mom has never used it against us here because we are mixed actually. Like me now, I took after my dad. He's light-skinned, so that's why I'm a little bit light-skinned. So my elder sister is dark. She's dark-skinned, and my immediate younger sister, she's almost like me. So, and my mom never used it against us. We just leave our mothers. And when people try to talk to me, they try to talk me down regarding my skin color. I don't bring myself down because I'd be like, no, I think I'm perfectly and wonderfully made. You can't tell me to maybe you can't tell me, you can't just push me into doing what I don't want to do. So once you have that orientation, once you have that within yourself, that okay, no matter how you look like, no matter your skin color, no matter what disorder you have, when you carry yourself high and you just that kind of self-esteem. You don't have a low self-esteem, you have a high self-esteem, and you talk, you do things the way normal people do their things. So they won't even have the mindset of coming to you, like to tell you and to shade your skin color. And Nigerians, we all our lives, I wouldn't want to say our life is joke here because we play with everything, we joke with everything here. Even people that have skin disorder like albinism. Albinism, right? So like people with albinism, most of them, they are now making money with their skin color. Like, I'm not saying people with low self-esteem, I'm talking about people with high self-esteem. They are now trying to make money with their skin color, because last week I watched a skit online and it was actually acted by all this albino here in Nigeria, and it was fun because even they themselves, they are making, though we were looking at them like, what are they doing? Like, are they stupid? That kind of stuff. But they are making millions of naira from it, and we don't even know it. But I think that's because they don't have a low self-esteem. They come out, they make skits, they make people laugh even with their skin color, and they are making millions from it. So yeah,
I am here just to learn, because the only thing I know about colorism is the bleach and the creams that I used, and I'm just like trying to see how we can let women know that this is poison to the skin, really. go to their body. I grew up in Sierra Leone, Ajawala, which is in West Africa, and as you know, and the bleach thing, not the colorism as such. I don't think people were told about that. For me, I was just conscious that people were bleaching. But here in England, the creams are illegal, but I don't know, somehow the African women and Indian women seem to be able to get hold of this cream to use it. Well, I think they use cream anyway.
I think you talked about bleaching of skin, right? If I'm right.
Yes, I'm just saying that in England, that's all I know about it. That somehow they're able to get this cream, get some cream or some products to bleach your skin. And it's mostly the Africans doing that as well, and Indians.
I was just going to say it's still very big business, right? Skin bleaching creams. So, for example, in India, which is what I know about and where I think Fair and Lovely in particular comes from originally, there was a bit of an outcry a little while ago about Fair and Lovely creams, and so as a result, the manufacturer, which I believe is Unilever, changed the name of the creams. So instead of calling them Fair and Lovely, I think they're now called something a little bit different. And in addition, I think they changed the formulation slightly as well at the same time. And so the advertising has changed. So if you look at ads, for example, for Fair and Lovely creams from, say, the 90s, they're pretty horrific because they really are about dark skin is bad, and the only way you're going to get a job or get a whatever partner or whatever it is by having fair skin, and so therefore you use this cream. Over time, that messaging has changed somewhat. So nowadays, I think they sort of focus more on brightening your skin or clearing your skin as opposed to lightening your skin, right? So there's a subtle difference in the way they market them. And so, so people still buy them, right? Because they still view them as something that's appealing, something that, they want to use to improve their skin in whatever way, shape or form, right? And there's a lot of skepticism over how much these creams have changed over time and whether they're still using a lot of the same, ingredients and stuff that they were using before. And, and also I think there's skepticism because, Unilever is a corporate who's profiting off, what is quite an awful practice, attitude, etc., in countries like India and also in, places in Africa and all sorts of places around the world, to be honest. So yeah, so I think the skin bleaching and the skin lightening industry is still very big business for companies like Unilever, and that's why these creams still exist and why they're still available for people to purchase around the world.
Okay, thanks for that. Interesting. I'll have a look up after. Thank you.
I wanted to.
Sorry,
Honestly.
Yeah, it's back.
power blinked out. I don't know what happened. I apologize. I thought it cut everyone off, so I'm glad that you're still on. Okay.
Yeah, we're still here, still talking,
Okay.
talking about the skin bleaching creams. I actually have never heard of this cream. And I mean, I know, of course, there are skin bleaching creams available, but I've never really known anyone to use them, or you just kind of know they exist. And like, yes, maybe they can like lighten scars, but I have, heard of people using, or I've heard of skin bleaching creams, but I didn't know it was used so extensively. But what I wanted to add was that, interestingly enough, I think the Asian beauty products are really popular now. I personally haven't used them. I know some people who are really interested in them and they use them. But I feel like I've read recently where even Asians will use skin bleaching creams. So that was kind of profound to know that, Koreans are very fair, you know. So to think that, maybe Koreans and Japanese people, I don't know if, other ethnicities, within the Asian cultures use them, but definitely it's a part of the Korean beauty culture. And I was surprised to find that out.
So even in the Korean culture, they're the skin color is an issue.
Yeah. And again, like I hope I'm not like, misquoting or saying, describing something I've read incorrectly, because, it was just a quick read, kind of just a sound bite. But I do know that the Korean beauty products are really popular. And I want to be confident and say I do recall, hearing that they also use the skin bleaching creams, and I was astounded because they're already fair. They're very fair as it is, or maybe, maybe it's someone who is just a tinge tanner, and they still feel like they have to, do they want to be porcelain? Like I'll probably read into it more, because now I'm curious, as to the extent of use of it in the Asian culture.
Well, I can go along with that because I live here now, and there is an big promotional drive that goes on about Chinese women wanting to look fair. So there are certain products like SK2, I think, that, and most of the products like Lancome, SK2, they, Niti said, rather than talking about the bleaching, it's really about clarifying and brighten your skin. So the branding language has. So from my part, I am one of the 5 daughters, and I am dark. I am the darkest among my sisters. I spoke about this the last time, but I never used skin product. But there was something. I think Niti will go along with this. There is turmeric, yeah, and I remember we had to use that to not to be fair, but I have no idea why, but I was told it's good for my skin. So we all, I don't know, once a week, like putting a face mask, we will do that. But the only product I remember was something called Aislinn. I mean, this dates me. So we would use that, but I would look at this box, and believe it or not, there was a mountain, snow, yeah, Switzerland, and I remember looking at it thinking, oh, wow, okay, I'm going to be Swiss. But these are all some of it. I'm laughing because this is my background, but I want to share something else that happened recently. So I am dark. And then I found myself in London. I went to London to train as a nurse. And I found myself being stared at most of the time. And I shared this at the last time. I didn't realize, okay, I was young, all of that, but I didn't realize that nurses nicknamed me Midnight Blonde. I didn't even know this until about 4 years ago when I was in my friend's house. She said to me, this is the name we gave you. And I just laughed because I thought it's so funny that just because I'm dark and I was whatever I was, the name calling was Midnight Blonde. But in London, it was very interesting. People wouldn't sit next to me, for instance, which I didn't know until I got to know that, say there's a seat next to me, the tube, there's an empty seat next to me. People would walk in and wouldn't sit. And I noticed that. I go back to London now, and I noticed that, yeah, so I don't know. But I wanted to share something that happened recently, and I want to share about what colorism is all about for us as well, how we internalize it. So just after Christmas, I went to Penang. Penang is an island for my small break. And we went into this Chinese restaurant. And I was with my cousin, who's fair, and her daughter, who is fair. And there was a little Chinese girl. It was a very interesting evening, because the mother was serving and the three children were the waiters and waitresses. And this little girl, she must have been about 7, she's a Chinese girl. She was busy talking to the table next door. They were all white Australians, and she was entertaining them, and she was very curious and all of that. And my cousin and I, we were just sitting listening for somebody to come and take an order. Then she turned around and she looked straight at me and she said, "You're so black." Now, from a 7-year-old little girl, that triggered so much for me, you know. And it was in public space, yeah. And my reaction was to say, "You're so white." And I kind of left it like that, but I have been thinking about it, about my own reaction, you know, about certain things that triggers for me when somebody makes a reference to my color. And I have been thinking about this because I wanted to come today and share that my reaction to the little girl was also not okay. You know, she probably was very curious, but I should have just made something light of it. But because I triggered so much, and I'm not kidding, yeah, it was a public place, and my cousin was shocked. Everybody was shocked. And the table next door to me, they were shocked as well. So that was one. So the reason I'm sharing all this is that how deeply we internalize our own colorism and how we need to cope. You know, my coping mechanism at that moment wasn't really helping me, especially to a 6-year-old. You know, I should have been more compassionate and made a joke of it. I don't know. But the second incident is, okay, so I have a niece who's going to get married in the Tamil community. When you want to get married, it wasn't a match made. She's been dating this person called Raj. And we all had to go to I had to go to my sister's house because Raj and his mother was visiting us. And again, this is my own triggering. I don't know how to cope with it. The mother came out of the car and she was so fair. And I felt really, it affected me anyway. They all came in and sat down and I sat next to her talking. And she was talking about colorism. She kept making reference to a sister in India and how fair they all are. And I felt really uncomfortable because I wanted to just talk to this elderly woman who is going to be my niece's mother-in-law, and I wanted to get to know her. And I felt a bit uncomfortable because she was making reference, and next to me she was just white, sitting next to me. But the most interesting thing that happened, and this is where I'm going back about families, yeah. So my sister, my niece's mother, she tapped on my shoulder and she said, come into the room, there's a phone call. And I was just like, what do you mean there's a phone call? Anyway, she then made an excuse to her future mother-in-law. And I went into the room, and both my niece and my sister took me into the room and they said, oh, don't talk so much to her because she's always talking about colorism. Now, I felt really upset with my sister for saying that, because saying that to me, what I'm trying to say is that every time colorism is brought on, the feelings we go through, or at least I go through, is so at so many layers. So I was really shocked that my niece and my sister would say that and pull me out away from her, talking to her, which I thought was, I don't know. I kind of said, why are you doing this? Anyway, the rest of the day was not okay for me because I felt really nervous to go anywhere near to this woman who's going to be my niece's mother-in-law. So I wanted to share that, I wanted to share about, gosh, the emotions we go through. But it's not so much the self-esteem for me, but it's about how I cope and how I trigger, and then how I cope. So that's what I wanted to share.
So you didn't ask your sister and niece why they responded to you like that?
I did. After they went, um, they left. We were all talking. It's like that. The family gets together and we talk about. They were really nice. I must say, the father had many sisters there. 17 people turned out. They were all really nice because it was really a bonding section, getting to know each other, two families coming together before the wedding. And we were just talking generally, and I actually said to my niece, I don't know why you said all that. And she said, oh, it's okay, Prima, she's always talking about colorism. And then I said to her, but you're going to marry into this family. She's going to be your future mother-in-law. How are you going to cope? My niece is a bit more fairer than me. And she just kind of brushed it off. But I haven't brought it up with my sister, my sister. Haven't brought it up. But I don't know. I mean, recently, all this happened in December. Oh.
I'm listening to your story, and I think it's easy for your sister and your niece to not bring it up because it's not their experience, and I think maybe because they're lighter, they can't relate to what that impact is for you. And I think it's probably easier for them to come to you and say, hey, versus, confronting her. Now, they don't have to do it there. They can maybe do it in private. Like that would be, it would definitely will probably make you feel better, and it will feel like they're advocating, more for you, even if they went to her separately, alone, at a later date and said something. Whether that will ever happen, I don't know, but I can relate to why you would feel that way, because you didn't initiate that conversation, and you're kind of a victim of the conversation, or you're the victim of that particular circumstance. And instead of recognizing that, it's kind of like there was no advocacy for you. So I think what you feel is logical. It makes sense that you were very triggered. I mean, it's traumatic, right? So I think what happens is all these little incidents, these little moments, a lot of times they're incidents of colorism. It's not always a big thing. Sometimes it's a lot of small things that happen, just really tiny little things, microaggressions that just happen over and over and over again. And it sits in your spirit, it sits in your soul, and I just, I wish I could have like the perfect thing to say, to you, but that's the first thing I thought of just listening to your story, is that it makes sense that you would react that way. To me, I feel like that's trauma, you know, like we live in our skin and we live in our bodies, you know, and, you know, we want to be comfortable in our skin and in our body. And when we can't be, you know, it's almost feels like a matter of safety, you know, whether it's physical safety or emotional safety. And, you know, they put that burden on you and it shouldn't have been placed on you. So um, I just I just want to kind of, you know, say that, you know, I hear
Thank
you
you.
and I see you. I
Thank you.
see what happened there. And
Thank you.
yeah.
And it's really, I mean, going back to families, you know, and colorism and all this. In my own family, of course, it wasn't an issue. The community did, yeah, but that's all part of the Tamil community. As what Niti had explained, you know, that you have to be fair to get married, all of that. But as sisters, we broke through all those barriers because we are professional women. Um, and but what happened at that moment, it's a family thing, you know, because the conversation later on was, oh, she's always talking about it. She's always talking about colorism. That was what my niece said. And now then I kind of, you know, it's two families coming together. And that family, they are a mixture of colors. But she was exceptionally fair. And I don't know, I suppose. Well, I did meet her to extend the story a little bit because we had to go to their place to bond and get to know each other. And I said hello and spoke and felt more comfortable. She wasn't saying anything to me. But what I'm saying is that the undercurrent is going to be there in the family context. My niece who's going to get married into that family. And we, on the wedding day, there will be all the relatives and we all are of different colors. You know, my niece is very fair, I'm very dark, you know. So, but the whole thing was about what my sister did to me. And I have to have a conversation now that I'm speaking about it, because she just kind of came and pulled me out and said, oh, don't talk to her. I'm like, that's terrible, you know, it's like, and I haven't had this conversation with my sister, but thank you, I will. I think I have to kind of get my voice heard. Yeah, thank you.
Vimla, can I just say something as well, just to add? I think too, part of the problem often, as I see it, can sometimes be that these topics and these issues are so taboo and so stigmatized within societies or communities like ours that, you know, when someone is quite openly talking about these issues, there can be also, and you know, I'm not saying this is necessarily what happened because only your sister really knows why she reacted the way she reacted. But sometimes I feel like there can be sort of this push against having that conversation and kind of like, you know, it's kind of like, we don't need to talk about that. Let's move on, right? And so sometimes it's just kind of a way of going, no, let's not talk about it. And if your sister has an inkling that this is something that potentially, you know, is an issue for you and could be something that you would need to discuss if someone's raising it in that conversation, it could have been potentially a way of sort of cutting that conversation short. The other thing I wanted to say that's interesting is, you know, there's this issue, right, of people talking about issues that aren't their own lived experiences. And it's really interesting when you talk about someone who is quite fair, talking about colorism as it affects family members. You know, in some ways, I find that it's kind of easier for people to do that when it's not their own lived experience, right? And so perhaps that's the reason why she feels so comfortable talking about it, because it's not her issue. or something
Mm.
that she's faced herself, but it's something that she's seen others face. And seeing someone else face something is very different from experiencing it yourself, as we all know, right? Like, it's like, say, for example, if a guy was to get up and talk about, you know, issues that a woman of color faces, for example, in a workplace setting or in whatever setting, right? It would feel awkward and strange, right? So it's really interesting, this sort of dynamic of, you know, hearing, I guess, someone who hasn't experienced colorism talking about colorism, because it is a very personal, you know, thing
Yes.
to
Yes.
experience, right? So I don't know exactly where I was going with that comment, but it just kind of, it just stood out to me as I was listening to you
No, no.
speak. And it was like, I can see why you would be triggered in that moment, talking or hearing this woman speak about it when it's quite clear it's not her experience either.
Yes.
And she's talking about it a lot, because I think I would be triggered in the same way and going, how can you talk about this when it's not your
Yes,
experience?
I
Right?
did. I felt, especially just referring, making lots of reference to her own sisters and being fair. I did feel uncomfortable. So
Mm.
maybe my sister, my other sister, saw my distress or my uncomfortableness, and that's why maybe she came and pulled me out.
Possibly.
Could be. I need to talk to her. I need to talk to my sister about why she did that. But thank you, thank you.
Yeah. And also the other thing too is that if your family, like, you didn't have that conversation necessarily because it wasn't something that was a part of your family growing up, but it was something you saw in the broader community, there's potentially, you know, potentially your sisters felt the same way, right? Depending on their skin
Yes.
colors and everything else, and experienced their own trauma as a result of it. So it could have also been a way of guarding themselves against the trauma of, you know, what they've experienced in the past as well, potentially,
Yeah,
maybe.
yeah.
Who knows?
Yes, we never, as girls, as children, we never spoke about our color. It was never discussed in the family.
Mm. Mm.
Yes, thank you. Interesting.
I want to go back to the experience you mentioned first with the child.
Mm.
Mm.
So I can say, especially living in the South, that I've had the occasion of being stared at by a white child, and I'm it's almost like the horror on the face. But and I at one time I actually told a kid, I was like, "You can touch it; it doesn't come off." Like, why are you looking at me like that? But you know, it's crazy. But there's even that it just made me think about another thing. So just a little history. So here in Nashville, you know, during the segregation period, they had the whites only pools and public pools. And then you've had, I think it was like only one or two that were just for Black people. And so a gentleman here who I used to call him my Nashville dad. He was like my dad away from my dad. And so he was a civil rights activist. He's a type of person who is going to push the limits as much as he can. And you can't just tell him no without giving him a reason. And you can't just tell him no without him trying to make it a yes for himself. So he and a friend decided they wanted to go to the whites only pool. So they went, and he said, you know, they were, you know, respectful, and they spoke with the lady that was at the little the gate area and asked her, you know, can we come in here and swim? And he said that she was very nice, and she told them, you know, well, you know, you can't come in here. You know, you're not allowed to come in here. And he says, well, why not? So he's going to ask anyway, knowing what the answer is. And so she would never really give an actual answer other than you're just not allowed. Well, they decided they were going to go anyway. But, you know, his response was like, are you afraid that we're going to make the water dirty? The water is going to stay the same. So, like, we're not going to change the water. Like, what is the problem? And that, for me, I like to ask these questions. When you throw something at someone like that, and then they can't come up with a real valid reason, because sometimes they don't even know why they're acting the way they act, why they have that opinion, why they feel that. My thing is with this like of darker complexion people, my question is why? What is the problem you see with someone who is of a darker brown shade? There's nothing wrong with it. What is the problem? And no one will really have an answer for you. They won't have any valid answer. The little child. I wonder, I'm going to ask you all if you can just kind of chime in, because you have a concern over how you responded or how you wanted to respond. I can very well agree with how you may have wanted to respond, but I see what you mean, that perhaps there was a better way. And I wonder what could have been a better way. What do you all think would be appropriate ways to respond to someone, be it a child or an adult, who makes a comment like that, that's supposed to be derogatory, that maybe is meant to be an insult, that is meant to point out that he or she feels you're flawed, but we know you're not. But how should we respond to that?
Wow. Yeah. That's pretty loaded. And I think it's loaded because that is the response can sometimes be knee-jerk because it is instinctual, you know. I remember when I was around 14, I went to Germany to visit my father, and some other families was with us as well on that trip. And one of my younger cousins actually had her hair braided. And I remember, I think it was like a couple of German men, maybe, they were really curious about her hair and they asked, could they touch it? However, they weren't rude. They weren't like creepy. You can tell that they were really genuinely curious. And I think the guardian that was with us, was like okay with it because they were really actually friendly. They weren't being harmful. So when I compare that to, let's say, the instances with like small children, I think, if we had the ability to be our best selves, then we would maybe tap into the curiosity, or we would ask a question. Why do you say that? Why do you think that? What do you think about that? Or, yes, I am brown. Do you like it? And you kind of put the responsibility back on to them versus you absorbing, and you are kind of they're projecting on to you and they take no responsibility for that projection. So that's kind of my answer for that. And I say if, right, we can be our best selves, because sometimes it just doesn't happen. We may feel like we're protecting ourselves, so we may not react in the way that we would have liked if we felt safer, or if we kind of had that moment to just kind of pause and then react. But I think it's subjective. It depends on the circumstance, what's happening in the moment. But that would be my answer, would be to give yourself grace for however you choose to react in the moment. And if you are able to approach it with curiosity and give the responsibility back to the other person. That's what I think. Go now.
Yeah, I was going to say a very similar thing to you, actually. Like, I went to a conference a few months ago, and one of the speakers there, and this is slightly different, but I'll get to the reason I'm talking about this in a second. So one of the speakers there was a Paralympian. So, you know, has been disabled his whole life. And one of the things he was saying in his keynote speech at this conference was that what he hates more than anything else is when a parent tries to shut down a child's curiosity about him and his disability and his wheelchair. And he's like, that's exactly, like, if there's one message I want people to take away today, it's, if you're a parent, do not do that to your kids. Let them say, do whatever it is that they want to say, because at the end of the day, that's how they learn and that's how they explore difference, right? And it's true, because, you know, often, like, you know, with particularly, I think, people that are, you know, disabled or have some other, particularly a visible disability, right? You know, some kids will make comments occasionally, especially when they're very little. And sometimes as a parent, your natural instinct is to go, hush, you know, don't say that, or you shouldn't say that, or whatever. And I think it's similar to this situation. And Julie, as you said, obviously, you know, it's, you know, you're going to be triggered at times and you're not always going to react in the best way possible. But I think, yeah, if you, the more we can lean into curiosity, particularly with little kids who don't necessarily come at things with that aspect of judgment, like it's just they're stating a fact, right? And that's the fact as they see it. You're very dark, right? Perhaps they've not been exposed to many people who have darker skin. Perhaps, you know, they've heard their own family talking about dark-skinned people in a certain way, you know, so it might be that that's where this is coming from, right? So I think, yeah, as you said, Julie, the more we can sort of just respond in a manner that's kind of like, well, you know, yes, I am, you know, and do you know many dark-skinned people? Like, you know, just like engage in conversation with them. I think the more they will be educated, right, about difference and about different people. And it goes for any sort of difference, you know, it's not just dark skin, it's whatever the difference is. I think the same thing applies with kids.
Like both of those responses, very much. Yes, and Julie.
With the little experience I have with siblings and little children around me, I think if a child should ask a sensitive question like that, or I think maybe he or she might have been hearing things about her color or whatever it's in her from other people, and they are definitely saying it in a bad manner, so in such a way that maybe they are trying to hurt our ego. So I think the only thing you can just do is just to call the child and tell the child how beautiful she is. Like, you just explain to her, like, just take a good look at yourself. You can even give her references of people that have the same skin color as her and they are doing great in life. You know, we have lots of successful Black people. You can give her references. Okay, look at this person, look at this person, look at this person. And being dark doesn't make you an animal. Your skin color doesn't make you an animal. You are also an human being. You also have rights to life. So whatever people are saying about you, whatever people are trying to harass you with your skin color or anything, you just don't look at their side. You focus on yourself, and always consider you always consider yourself being a better person. You don't let anybody just come to you and talk down at you. So you
I
just
imagine a response could be, you know, someone can say, "Oh, you're so dark," and you say, "Yes, I am," and I am gorgeous. Yes, I am. So just projecting confidence and projecting self-love, you know, and letting individuals know we love what we have. This is what we were blessed with, and get with it. You know, it's not going to change. And you know, it's like I love. Who was it? Vimla, your friend who was commenting about, she had posted about certain colors she wouldn't wear because she thought she was too dark to wear them. And I love to see bright colors on really, really dark complexion people. I think it's just gorgeous. It's like, you know, just the perfect backdrop for bright colors, but then also is the perfect accent. You know, this beautiful dark brown skin is just perfect for bright colors. So, you know, we've got to enjoy the skin we're in. I remember in the 80s, wow, okay, I just aged myself. In the 80s when I was in high school and like fluorescent colors were out in clothing. And so I had this one teacher and she was just this gorgeous dark brown woman. And she wore the brightest, loudest pink lipstick. And it was so pretty on her, but it was not something you would, you know, typically expect to see, or a lot of people maybe shied away from it, but she wore it and she wore it. And it was so gorgeous on her. And I just wanted to share that. So, you know, just so anyone who sees this, enjoy the skin you're in is what we're saying. You know, it's not going to change. You know, you can chemically change it, which is definitely not healthy and is not worth it. But you know, we must learn to love who we are, period. You know, and anyone who has, and I had to learn this about even when I used to get a lot, I used to be really, really thin. So for most of my life, I was really, really thin until, ladies, you know, a certain age, that changes. And then you can't do anything about that either. But I always get comments from people commenting on my weight. And that just made me so insecure. So that body shaming, as they call it now it has a title. But it made me so insecure about how I looked. So from trying to wear bigger clothing and all that kind of stuff to shield my body, but at some point I started to embrace it. So I will put on my little dresses and I'm going to put on my little clothes. And I remember this one lady at that I worked with, and she said something to me that was very offensive. And I asked her, because she was heavier. So I said, that wasn't kind. I said, so if I told you I thought you were too fat, how would that make you feel? And, you know, we had a heart to heart after that. So sometimes it's a self-reflection of the person who is making a derogatory comment toward us. So it's not even really meant to affect us, but it's the self-reflection of that person who is making the comment because of something within them. So I mean, sometimes that's the root of it when it's coming from you know, a place of insult. Sometimes. Does anyone else have any other comments or any other experiences? We're going to start to end this session this time. It's been very enlightening, as always.
You know, it's funny because when, you know, you told me about this, my first reaction was fear. Like I didn't, you know, I didn't know, like, you know, what would I say, you know, what would conversations be like, because it is very raw and it's very uncomfortable. I think you worry about not only how you feel and protecting your experiences, but then you don't want to maybe, you know, offend someone else by sharing what you went through, because you never know what someone else sees reflected in them. And you don't want to touch that. And then, you know, it brings up something for someone else and it's not a productive, you know, or healing environment, because maybe people walk away, you know, a little more hurt than where they started out. Um, so that was just, you know, my, you know, a little bit of my apprehension. But what I will say is that I definitely have more food for thought, to hear of different experiences. Like my idea of colorism was, and self-esteem was based on my experiences maybe here in the United States within my own culture, and to listen to other perspectives, and the way that colorism is manifested, in different environments. Um, it There was definitely comfort in just sharing, and knowing that other people are also kind of making their way through it. But I think reflection is good because, at least for me, I'll kind of gain a little more armor. Sometimes you have to borrow strength, from someone else. So that's my takeaway from tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
We
Thank
need
you,
to
Angela.
the way we carry ourselves matters as well. If you think, okay, before going out and you look at yourself in the mirror and be like, okay, I'm beautiful, I'm beautifully and wonderfully made. Just say that to yourself. If that is going to be your daily routine, the mindset you have about yourself, it matters a lot. If you have the mindset of okay, I'm good looking, I look good, whatever anybody says to you won't even matter. You won't even.
Confidence is the name of the game. I think that's what it all boils down to. It's so easy to be damaged. It's so easy for words to hurt. So it's just a matter of us just having that inner strength. So if we haven't had it, of finding it and letting that guide us, So walking behind that shield of strength and that confidence, so that insults don't become as harmful anymore. I love a confident person. I love to see a person who just exudes just that self-esteem and that confidence, and that and you can't, if you chip away little pieces of it, you can't chip away chunks. You know what I mean? So you might get a little piece, but you're not gonna get chunks taken out of their pride, their self-pride, and their self-esteem. And I really like that. So on that note,
Can I
we
just say one thing before you
Yes,
say
absolutely.
goodbye?
Absolutely.
Just one thing I wanted to add. Just I think earlier on, I think Vimala said something about, how do we sort of arm ourselves, or basically be able to react in these situations in a way that's more positive, right? And so I think, this space and spaces like this, where we have the opportunity to discuss situations like what you were talking about, Vimala, and things that, have triggered you, and where potentially you thought you could have reacted differently to the way you reacted, or you had questions around the way you reacted. I think spaces like this are really important for that, because I think the more we can discuss with other people who've had similar trauma in the past, or, have an understanding of the trauma, the more we can move forward to a place where, one, we're stronger, and two, we can react differently in those situations in the future. So that's kind of all I really wanted to say. But I think, sharing, talking, being vulnerable about your own experiences can give you that strength to face these situations differently. So I wanted to thank you, Thea, for this beautiful space, and for allowing us to sort of discuss our own personal experiences and be able to, grow stronger through that sharing.
You're all welcome. And I thank each one of you so much. I think every little bit that we talk about, is going to help someone else. It helps us, ourselves, but it's going to help others as well. And we'll keep this platform open, and invite others in as we go on. Please stay on for the after party. So don't go anywhere yet, okay? I'm gonna stop recording. But thank everyone, World Agricultural Community Project. Pamela,
Thank you, everyone. I have to leave.
Oh, okay. All righty.
Lovely
Well,
meeting all of you.
thank you. You too. Have a good one, and we will talk soon. We'll speak with all of you again soon.
Okay, thank you. Bye.